From UFOs to psychic powers and government conspiracies, history is riddled with unexplained events. You can turn back now, or learn the stuff they don't want you to know.
And we are back. And we are jumping over to a little combo of Newsweek and the BBC. We're going to use the BBC's headline, though. Here it is. You ready for it? North Korea not responding to U.S. contact efforts.
Ghosted?
Yeah, go ahead.
Did we get ghosted?
Well, the Newsweek headline is Kim Jong-un ghosts U.S. as Joe Biden's North Korea shakeup looms.
It's unfair for me to say that because you know I'm all over this, Matt.
Yeah, I know. The headline alone is a little bit scary for those of you new to the party here. We've discussed extensively North Korea's interest in nuclear technology, nuclear weapons. We've discussed a lot of their practices in the past, some of the horrific things that have gone on there from stories of people who've escaped. Also just the fascinating political and socioeconomic situation of everyday citizens there in the DPRK, the Democratic People's Republic of Korea. And in this case, we had a changing of the guard in the U.S., right? When President Joe Biden stepped in, President Trump stepped out. And generally, with any country, well, again, like Ben, I just want to talk with you about it. I just want to hear you talk about it, but I'll put it in my understanding. Generally, you want to have a touch base with your friends and your enemies when you've got a changing of the guard like that. And the current understanding is that the United States, since around February, has been attempting to make direct contact with Kim Jong-un or the top levels of the government there in the DPRK. And those emails essentially have gone unanswered, or the phone calls, or however they're trying to contact the government there. We'll just read a little bit from this article. They're saying that Washington, or the folks there in Washington, have been attempting to reach Pyongyang in several different ways to prevent tensions escalating, because tensions are certainly up. There were several attempts with the previous administration of the U.S. to lower those tensions, but it seems like those efforts were not as successful as they could have been. Middling success there, forgetting from Ben's hand. At least according to the BBC, the talks failed to persuade North Korea to give up the concept or the attempt to build nuclear weaponry. In this case, it's to further refine the uranium and radioactive materials. Here's the other thing, and this one's a little confusing for me because I've read several articles for this. BBC is saying that the DPRK has failed to recognize Biden as the president, or the new administration, essentially. Is that your understanding, Ben?
Yeah, they have. I mean, as a foreign power, you're under no real obligation to play nice. A lot of this stuff could be best described as like polite rules of international society. Just like you said, Matt, call the person, congratulate them. You know what I mean? Even if you don't particularly care for them or care for what their country represents to you. But we have to understand there is a ton of precedent going into this ghosting of a president. First, North Korea, the current, and I'll say it, the regime they're big fans of the Trump administration because the Trump administration was granting some legitimacy that the DPRK did not historically have in the West. And if you go back to just a few months ago, if you go back to like 2019, I keep forgetting 2020 also happened. If you go back to 2019, you'll see that North Korean official press had like called Joe Biden a rabid dog, said he was power hungry and that he should be beaten to death. This is all on record. And he was saying that Kim Jong-un is a, quote, murderous dictator. They're not friends.
As opposed to Trump, who is pretty much complimentary. He very much clearly had a kindred attitude to the dictator, for obvious reasons. But yeah, that stuff. It's interesting though, Ben. You're right. Like it is sort of like formality. It's not like it's the law. I mean, it's alienating, sure. How much more alienated could we get from this regime? But it sure is an interesting escalation, right?
Yeah. I mean, Matt, to your point, like, it does seem it is kind of unconventional, I would say, for these countries not to be speaking to one another, but it's like unconventional in that countries usually do speak to one another through some kind of channel, right? Some kind of diplomacy, even if it's backdoor. But the issue here is that if you look at it through the North Korean perspective, I would say we have to understand first, things are pretty rough, and probably from what we know, things are pretty rough on the ground for the average North Korean. And a lot of the stuff reported both by the country and by its opponents it's straight up propaganda. There's no way around it. A lot of the waters are very muddy. But let's say I will stop TED Talking after this, but this is a question, and it's something that I don't think we're hearing a lot when this is reported in the West. Let's say that you, Matt Frederick, through a very bizarre set of circumstances, inherit the leadership of North Korea. There was some stuff going on. 23andMe explained it, and now, boom, you are in charge of the Democratic People's Republic of North Korea. Cool. Like that old John Goodman movie, Duke of Earl or something like that. Never mind.
I don't know it.
Okay, just read the wiki on it. But like, all right, so you're in charge. You're in charge of the Democratic People's Republic of Korea. You are getting a ton of pressure from coalition's Western states telling you to step away from this nuclear weapons program. That's the main thing the West tells you about every day.
Yeah, and they also are hanging out very close in South Korea doing tons of drills with the US military and other powers that seem to be antagonistic towards us and our goals.
Yep. And then you think, well, they're offering me some pretty cool carrots, right? In the carrot and stick idea. They're offering me some pretty cool carrots to say, yes, get rid of this this testing site that I have and get rid of the ICBMs that I built. But wait, you start thinking, maybe Noel, you're in this, you're like the number one advisor. You're the smartest guy in the room here. And you go, hang on. What happened to all those other countries that peacefully stepped away from their nuclear programs? Iraq, not doing super hot under Hussein. Libya, Gaddafi also didn't have a particularly happy ending. So the idea here, if you're Matt now, and if you're Noel, the advisors, the idea is that I, as North Korea, know the U.S. will have the number one goal of removing my ability to have nuclear weapons, no matter what you want to call it. They'll try to remove that ability. And if I help them, if I agree, if I comply, then history has shown me two very recent examples of just how terrible the outcome will be. So what do you say, Matt, at that point? Now the new president of the U.S. has been elected. This guy dragged you through the press for years.
This is my response. While we do appreciate your comments, the United States is most certainly our biggest enemy, though I'm not opposed to diplomatic maneuvers moving forward. There could be something we could work out, though, you would have to make the first move, United States, because, we're here, we're North Korea, and we need you to show us that you mean business, and then maybe we can do something. But in the interim, if you don't do anything, here's what I need. And this is what we're going to do just until you make the first move. We're going to build longer range, better missiles. We're going to build hypersonic missiles. We're going to build some satellites for recon. We're going to do some solid fuel intercontinental ballistic missile work. Don't worry, it's cool. We're going to make some new nuclear warheads.
New nukes?
We're also going to build some tactical nukes and also some UAVs, a brand new UAV that can, do all kinds of fun stuff for us. So that's what we're going to be doing. You decide what what action you actually want to take in order to reduce the tensions here, and then we can talk.
Oh, man. Not quite sure how to feel about this, Matt.
It's scary. You should feel scared a little bit, just enough, but especially if you're in South Korea or you're, within a certain radius of the DPRK.
It can hit Alaska and maybe California, the Hwasong 14, which I'm probably mispronouncing, but that's the latest ICBM. I think they just started coming out in like 2017. They were revealed. But yeah, of course you're going to say that. And then there's also, in this conversation at some point, although it hasn't been widely reported yet, boom, China has entered the chat because China very much wants North Korea to remain as a buffer state, right? Between South Korea and to lessen possible influence of Japan, et cetera, et cetera. So at some point, the president of the U.S., whoever that president might be, it's Biden currently, calls China. They have to. And they're like, hey, why is your boy on radio silence? And then China, the government of China, who knows how they handle that approach? They say, oh, whatever are you talking about? That's strange. Kim always answers the phone for me. Can you think of anything you might have done? Who knows? Who knows, man?
Listen to the rhetoric. So when Joe Biden was on the campaign trail, he would often, whenever asked a question, about tensions in North Korea or about dictators, there were all kinds of questions that were kind of lobbed at him, and he would always respond. Not always. He would often respond by referring to Kim Jong-un as a thug and other, authoritarian people as thugs. And this is a quote from Joe Biden. "The days of cozying up to dictators are over." Clearly in response to the previous administration and the views that administration was, had a different relationship with leaders such as Kim Jong-un. And I believe North Korea has referred to Joe Biden as a, quote, rabid dog.
Yes.
I think that's correct.
Them's fighting words.
Yes, and they went on, or someone, I'm not sure if it was Kim, I think it was maybe just someone representing the DPRK. One of them said that he should be beaten to death with a stick.
Yes, Washington Post reported that too, I think.
Yeah. And again, like the DPRK has consistently referred to the United States as their biggest rival, their biggest enemy, the, quote, foremost principal enemy. And it's just anything we could do to lessen the tension there, and like legitimately maybe in some way actually get the things that the civilians there need. I mean, we'll talk about it as many times as we have to, but there are people with genuine health concerns that are in need that live in the DPRK, who are just humans, just people like you and me, and they're living. They can't help that they're living in that regime, because we've learned that when one attempts to, abscond, to get away, there are major issues, and we've reported on some of those here, and we've also been seeing it for decades.
Yeah. So the problem is generational punishment. Meaning that if someone does something that violates a law in North Korea, their relatives can also be punished, maybe sent to a detainment camp, or even executed. And when people leave North Korea, attempt to defect, when they go through China, there is a huge likelihood or huge possibility of these people being trafficked, being sold into marriage, being caught by the Chinese authorities, who do not consider them refugees, but consider them what are called illegal economic migrants. And they'll just be returned to their home country where, of course, they have violated any number of laws by defecting. These are huge issues. And one thing that it is crucial to remember is whenever you're hearing a story about a government that's doing things the rest of the world order disagrees with, the people who live in that country often have very little decision-making ability, right? Like, North Korea is not checking with everybody who lives in North Korea about what the next policies should be. There's tremendous food insecurity. The international sphere, Order of Nations, still doesn't really know how hard COVID hit the country that was already in a very tenuous existence. China probably has a lot of information on this, but why release it? You know, it's terrible because it's literally being used as a buffer, an international bargaining chip, and this is a very old game. It's a game countries have played for a long time.